I was selling elementary school kids drugs. Kinda. When I was in elementary school, my mom used to stock up on SUPRADY and energy. One day, I tried it, and it was like a citrus explosion in my mouth. Better than any orange juice I'd ever had. Whether it was my young taste buds or the actual flavor, I was hooked. Fast forward to 5th grade, and Digimon mania was sweeping through my school. The craze wasn't just about watching the anime. There was this sticker collection book you had to fill with stickers hidden under yogurt lids. Being a massive Digimon fan, I knew every character, attack, evolution, and could belt out the opening theme by heart. I just couldn't let it slide. But there was a hitch. My family was pretty humble, and splurging on mountains of yogurt wasn't an option. Asking my parents for extra cash was also out of the question. So, I devised a plan. I started smuggling SUPRADY and energy tablets and a to L bottle to school, mixing up the magic potion in the bathroom, and selling cups of this orange juice to my classmates during recess. On my first day, the entire bottle was emptied at 5 minutes flat. Business was booming. For a whole week, I ran my little enterprise under the radar. None of the teachers noticed, except for the coolest one ever, my 4th grade teacher, Mr. Sarhani Rip. You were the realist. He actually found my scheme hilarious, especially after I explained my Digimon sticker dilemma. My mom never caught on because she thought my dad was using the tablets too. But eventually, the jig was up. Kids were bouncing off the walls with energy, and the teachers started asking questions. When they asked the kids what they had been snacking on, I realized, oh no, it's probably the juice I'm selling. So, I decided to quit while I was ahead. In the end, I made enough money to almost complete my Digimon collection book. It wasn't about the money though. Those last few stickers were ultra rare. But hey, I gave it my best shot and had a blast doing it. I used to steal cash from the Subway sandwich shop I worked at. I started working at a Subway as my first job. My boss was a loser. I was 17. He was 24. After working there for a while, I found out his parents bought him the Subway, as I'm assuming he wasn't really capable of doing much on his own. I was more mature than he was. He would always show me pictures of his weekend nights out, as if I thought that was cool or something. I just kept it easy going and went along with it. He was very lazy. Within a month or two of me working there, it went from me and one another person, and sometimes 3 during rushes, to me by myself, and one other person for dinner rushed to an hour before close. Whenever my boss showed up, he might fuck around for a bit and help a few customers, do paperwork and whatnot, and just leave or sit in his office doing jack shit. Essentially, he became very comfortable with me doing most of the work, and I did it well with no complaints. Honestly, Subways was kind of fun besides the lines when I was alone. After about 3 months in, he would barely be there when I start shift, or leave shortly after. I started dealing with more things, like franchise inspections and inventory divided by ordering. I was already doing the end-of-day reports since I was closing. I asked for a raise. He said no. It really didn't bother me too much, as it was just a part-time job for spending money. Help at home. Well, the more and more I learned the system and understood his lack of attention, I quickly realized I could make some extra cash. Basically, the end-of-day report would have counts of white and wheat bread. To make sure all used bread is accounted for, we throw some away at night, so there is generally a little variance. This count includes all the bread we have in stock, including in the freezer. The thing is, the open boxes in the freezer, we would just mark with a permanent marker, subtracting from the total each time we removed bread. Knowing he's not actually going to count out the bread in the freezer box, I would modify the count to say there was more bread in the box than there was. He rarely did the bread himself, and if the bread count in the box was low, I wouldn't mess with it, to be safe. He never knew the counts were actually off because the system was accurate. I would make cash by not ringing up the order. There's a camera aimed at the cash register, but I naturally blocked the screen, so it wouldn't have seen me not ringing the order up, and I pretended like I was pressing buttons. Lol. I had the subs' prices with tax memorized. When they pay with cash, I don't ring up the order, but I put the cash in the register, making a mental note of that amount. I didn't do this to every cash order, just easy ones, and obviously can't have 0 cash sales. At the end of shift, we do a cash drop of excess cash from the register to the safe via envelope drop. So while I was counting out the cash to drop, I know exactly how much of that was mina. I knew the perfect angle of the camera, that when placing the cash into the envelope, I quickly crumple up the money and keep it in my hand, while I drop the envelope into the safe. Then I just go do more closing stuff and put the cash in my pocket inconspicuously. I never got caught. On weekends I could easily make $100 without him noticing. I made over $10,000 from stealing cash alone, and I gave my mom most of my paycheck. I just used that money to put a down payment on my first car. Thanks, name redacted, you fucking idiot. I sabotage my only friend's attempt to make other friends, so that they don't leave me. Throwaway account as this friend most definitely knows about my main Reddit account. I'm 18, as is this friend, who for simplicity's sake I will refer to as Nick, and we've known each other since 2021. I've always been terrible at making friends, and I truly mean it when I say that he is the only actual friend I have other than basic superficial friends, who I don't interact with outside of school. I'm more or less his only friend too, and we've been reliant upon each other for 3 years. A month or so ago, someone from another friend group at school asked Nick if he wanted to hang out with them. I immediately became terrified of the idea that Nick could potentially leave me and join this other group of people who, by the way, despise me, so I immediately started to convince him that it was a bad idea, eventually leading to me making flat-out false screenshots of them, speaking about Nick negatively to prove that it wasn't worth it. He eventually agreed with me and decided to not go through with the plans. Now I know for a fact that he'd be better off with them than me. Plain and simple, they're objectively better company than hanging around with me, and I know he'd be much happier. But my fear of abandonment is so strong, and I so cannot imagine a life where I don't have a singular friend, that I can't bring myself to let go of him. And now the guilt is eating me up alive. It's all I can think about. Every time I see him, all I can think of is how I'm denying him a better social life out of my own selfishness. I think he's noticed something's up with me. He asked me recently why I looked so miserable all of a sudden, but I can't bear to tell him what I did. I know for a fact he, like me, wants to branch out and have other friends. I should have let him give it a try, but I didn't, and now I feel so terrible about it. He deserves far better, and I really don't know what to do. We're both definitely not in the best place mentally either, and I know for a fact he deserves friends who actually have their lives sorted out, unlike myself. But again, my brain cannot convince itself to actually do what's right and tell him the truth, that I ruined his chance of making new friends for my own selfish gain. I don't know what to do. Is confessing all this on Reddit the best course of action? Probably not. I'm just at a dead end. I stole promotional scratch cards from Burger King, ate burgers every meal for months. This was a long time ago. I was a skater in my 20s. The manager at Burger King had so much attitude, I felt he deserved it. They ran a promotional scratch card, a grid of 9 squares. Scratch off any single row. If it contains 3 matching symbols, you won that item. The options were fries, drink, or Whopper. So having worked out that the odds were ridiculously slim, it annoyed me, so off I went to Burger King. It was always minimally staffed, so as soon as the server turned her back, I grabbed a huge stack of cards. They were free after all. Every time I went, every time the server turned her back, I grabbed more, always keeping the stack in order. Now I worked out that the way to win was fully scratch a card off to establish which line was the winner. Then scratch off that corresponding line on the next until it stopped winning. Then completely scratch that one off. Rinse, repeat. This meant only about 1 in 30 didn't win, rather than the ridiculously long odds BK intended. The second best part of all this was the manager quizzing me, then getting visibly annoyed at my always been lucky explanation, but being unable to explain the impossible probabilities of being that lucky. But by far my favorite part was getting a burger off the manager. Getting my scratch card, sitting down, appearing to scratch it off, but swapping it for a pre-scratched one, then shouting, "Yes, free Whopper." He literally ran over, inspected my card every which way. Poor man. I wasn't keen on Coke or fries, so gave them all away to the younger skaters, who then absolutely pillaged the place. I'd have loved to have been a fly on the wall for the "how much extra money did you make off the promo area" meeting. I'm betting over 90% of the winners of their promo are just me. I, 18 Ms., stole money from my uncle and used it to sell old food at school. Back when I was 15, I ended up staying with my grandparents, my uncle, and my cousin all in one house, since they lived closer to my school. That way my mom wouldn't spend money on gas. There was a donut shop on the walk to school, and I had no way of making money. One day, I was bringing in the mail after school, and had to put my uncle's mail in his room while he was gone. I put a single letter on his bedside table and noticed a $20 sticking out of the drawer. I had an idea and grabbed it. The next day, I walked over to that donut shop and found out they sold one-day-old donuts in a set of 12 for $10. I bought the box and got a fresh one for myself. I went to school and intended to give the donuts to my friends when they showed up, but someone asked if they had one. When I said no, she offered to buy one from me. That made me realize people were willing to buy donuts before school, and so I agreed to sell it to her. For the next 2 years, I walked around school every morning, selling a dozen donuts every day and making a small profit without telling everyone they were day-old ones. After a while, I ended up buying the boxes a day and selling those all before school. I eventually earned enough to put $20 back in my uncle's room, and he never suspected I was the one that took it. I feel bad for stealing from my uncle, as it passed away a few months after. I slipped the money back into his room, but I got a few Switch games and a used Game Boy Advance online from the other money I had. I wasted 4 hours of my time and others while sitting in a changing room. Today I aching. Ms. worked 5 hours at my part-time job at the local Hungry Jack's before my older sister picked me up and drove me to gymnastics. Before she left to pick me up, she packed my bag, got me food, water and clothes to change into because there isn't enough time to go home in between. I was a little tired from work and took a short nap in the car, which only made me feel a little more tired, divided by. When I arrived, I went to the changing room and sat there for a minute on the bench. I opened my phone to check the time and saw I had a massage from a friend, and so I messaged him back and got distracted reading the messages of a Discord server I'm active in. After a short amount of time, I became self-aware of my actions and realized I still hadn't gotten changed. Stupidly, I decided to keep reading. After all, I wanted a little break after work. When I finally checked the time again, it has already been 30 minutes since my class was meant to start, and I'm still in my work uniform on phone. I panic a little and realize that even if I change now and go start training, it will be super suspicious and people will wonder where I have been, so I continue to sit and try and think about it. I can't decide what to do, so I just open Reddit and start looking at memes to take my mind off it. Soon an hour has passed and I'm screwed for sure. Instead of cutting my losses and just going out, I stay in here and go over scenarios of what people will say and do. I already feel quite guilty about wasting all the time, and now it's just getting later. I have Saturday here for the last 4 hours of my own volition doing nothing when I should be training. I'm still sitting here panicking and writing this instead of going out, but at least I have changed to make it look like I have at least done something. Sleeping with my best friend's mom for over 25 years. My best friend's mom was younger than all the other moms and very attractive. She was a single mom and was considered a cool mom because she would let us hang out at her house and play loud music and turn a blind eye to smoking cigarettes and weed. But her and I always had a special relationship, different from the other kids. We were both Sicilian, so that right there was a clincher. She was friendly with my mom, so I could be late coming home, as long as I said I was at her house. If I went looking for my friend, her son, and it wasn't home, she would always find a reason for me to come in and spend time with her. She was lonely and I filled a void in her life and was happy to do it. Well, fast forward, I'm 18 and my birthday and her sons were 2 days apart, so she threw us a big party. It was great. At the party, she had a couple of drinks in her and I went inside to use the bathroom. But there was someone in it. Well, she had followed me down the hall, and when I turned around, she was right behind me. She said feet to go pee, in a soft voice with her face a half-inch from mine, and she gently grabbed my crotch. I'm not bragging, but I'm bigger than most in that department. And she noticed, so she said, "You can use my bathroom." So I snuck around her, and we put caution tape at the bottom of the stairs, so nobody would go upstairs. And he went into her and got in the bathroom just immediately. Time between having to know it so bad and her grabbing it, I was fully erect trying to pee. Guys, you know how that goes, and I see hour if the corner of my eye. She is standing there with her arms crossed and this smirk on her face I'll never forget. I didn't know what to do. My dick was so hard I couldn't get it in my pants, so I just stood there. She said, "Well, we can't have you going downstairs like that now, come," in a baby voice. "I'm going to have to make that big erection go away," and dropped to her knees, and to this day gave me the best blowjob ever. And then we went back to the party. From that day on, we made time to have sex at least once a day for over 25 years. I got married, so did she. I had kids. She had one more, not mine, and then she got breast cancer and it took her really fast, and to this day, I look at my still best friend and it doesn't let in that it has a clue, but I see her in his eyes and I get a lump in my throat. I miss her a lot.